The emergency room hummed with controlled chaos at 2:47 a.m., that dead hour when the city's violence caught up with those who couldn't afford to avoid it. Maya Torres moved between gurneys with practiced efficiency, her scrubs wrinkled from a double shift that had stretched into a triple, her dark hair escaping its ponytail in wisps that stuck to her forehead. She checked the IV drip on bed 7, adjusted the blanket on the elderly woman in bed 3, and smiled reassuringly at the teenager whose broken arm would heal faster than his bruised pride. This was her world: fluorescent lights that bleached color from everything, the antiseptic smell that never quite masked human suffering, and the steady rhythm of crisis management that left no room for her own exhaustion. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. The third time in 10 minutes, which meant something was wrong. Maya stepped into the supply closet, the only place that offered a moment of privacy, and pulled out her phone to see 7 missed calls from her 13-year-old sister, Isabella. Her heart dropped into her stomach as she pressed the callback button, already moving toward the staff exit. Bella? What's wrong? The sob that answered made Maya's blood run cold. Maya, you have to come home. Please. Mom. Her sister's voice cracked completely. She can't breathe right. There's blood. I don't know what to do. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Maya was already stripping off her scrubs, pulling her jacket from her locker with hands that had steadied 1,000 patients but now trembled for her own family. I'm coming. Right now. Is she conscious? She won't talk to me. She's just... Bella's breathing hitched with panic. Maya, there were men. They came looking for money. They said she owed them, but we don't owe anyone. We don't have anything to owe. The words painted a picture Maya had seen too many times in this ER. Loan sharks, protection rackets, the predators who fed on neighborhoods like theirs where desperation made people vulnerable. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. I'll be there in 15 minutes. She made it in 12, her beat-up Honda screaming through red lights in the pre-dawn darkness. Their apartment building rose ahead, a tired structure in Pilsen where rent was almost affordable, and everyone minded their business because getting involved meant becoming a target. Maya took the stairs 3 at a time, her nurse's training already cataloging what she might need. Her personal medical kit, clean towels, ice, maybe a makeshift splint. The apartment door hung slightly ajar. Maya's stomach twisted as she pushed it open fully, revealing chaos. Furniture overturned, her mother's cherished photographs scattered across the floor, glass crunching under her feet. And there, in the center of their small living room, her mother lay crumpled against the wall. Mama! Maya dropped to her knees, her hands automatically going to check vitals, even as her vision tunneled with fear. Rosa Torres's face was swelling already, her left eye nearly shut, her breathing shallow and ragged. Blood crusted around her nose and mouth, her ribs. Maya's trained fingers found the telltale give of fractures. Maybe 3, maybe more. They said we had until Friday, her mother whispered, each word clearly agonizing. I told them I would have it. Your father's life insurance finally came through. Just 2 more days. Bella huddled in the corner, her young face aged by terror, clutching their mother's phone with white knuckles. Maya's mind raced through options. Call 911, but the ambulance would take 20 minutes in this neighborhood, and the bills would bury them deeper. Drive her mother to the ER herself, but moving her with those ribs could puncture a lung. Who did this? Maya asked, keeping her voice steady as she gently probed her mother's injuries. Mama? Who were they? Rosa's good eye focused on her daughter with an expression Maya had never seen before. Not just pain, but shame. They work for someone called Dante Reyes. I took a loan 6 months ago when your father got sick, when the hospital bills came. The interest... She coughed, and flecks of blood appeared on her lips. I couldn't keep up. Dante Reyes. The The name hung in the air like a curse. Even Maya, who deliberately avoided the underworld politics of Chicago, knew that name. Everyone did. He controlled the South Side with an iron fist wrapped in expensive suits, running everything from the warehouses to the legitimate businesses that served as fronts. His restaurants were where deals were made, where debts were collected, where people who crossed him simply vanished. Maya's hands moved automatically, cleaning wounds, checking pupils, assessing damage, while her mind spun with a fury that felt like ice rather than fire. Her mother, who had worked 2 jobs to keep them fed after their father died, who had never asked for help, who had sacrificed everything, had been beaten like an animal in their own home. "How much?" Maya asked quietly. 15,000. But with the interest they added, Rosa closed her eyes. 43,000 now. They said Friday, or they'd come back for you girls instead. The number should have been impossible. It was impossible. Maya made 38,000 a year as an ER nurse, and most of that went to rent, food, and Bella's school expenses. She had maybe 2,000 in savings. The life insurance Rosa mentioned would cover the original debt, but these vultures had tripled it through predatory interest that no legitimate lender could charge. Bella crept closer, her thin arms wrapping around Maya. "What are we going to do?" Maya held her sister, feeling the tremors running through that small body, and something crystallized in her chest. Not a plan exactly, but a direction. A terrible, desperate direction that made perfect sense in the way that falling feels like flying until you hit the ground. "I'm going to fix this," she said, the words emerging with a certainty she didn't feel. "Bella, stay with Mama. Keep this ice on her ribs. If her breathing gets worse or she starts coughing up more blood, you call 911 immediately, understand?" "Where are you going?" Her mother tried to sit up, gasping with the effort. "Maya, no. Whatever you're thinking, I'm going to talk to the person who can make this stop." Maya stood, her reflection in the broken mirror across the room showing someone she barely recognized. A young woman with her jaw set and her eyes burning with purpose that bordered on recklessness. "If Dante Reyes wants his money, he can tell his animals to stop beating helpless women and face someone who'll fight back." The words sounded braver than she felt. In truth, terror clawed at her throat, making each breath a conscious effort. But beneath the fear ran something stronger. The same instinct that made her run toward codes in the ER when everyone else froze. The stubborn core that refused to accept some situations as unfixable. She changed quickly, stripping off her blood-stained clothes and pulling on jeans and the nicest blouse she owned, as if dressing professionally might somehow legitimize what she was about to do. Her hands shook as she tied her hair back, but she forced them steady through will alone. "Maya, please." Her mother's voice followed her to the door. "These aren't people you confront. These are people you avoid, you pay, you survive." Maya turned back one last time, memorizing the scene. Her mother broken on the floor, her sister terrified in the corner, their small life shattered by men who saw them as nothing more than profit margins. "I'm done surviving, Mama. I'm going to make them see us." The drive to Reyes Holdings took 40 minutes through Chicago's transforming landscape. Pilsen's struggling working-class blocks gave way to the gleaming towers of the Loop, then shifted again into the industrial elegance of the West Side, where old warehouses had been converted into galleries and expensive lofts. Dante Reyes's restaurant, Sangre y Oro, occupied a converted firehouse on a corner that screamed old money and new power. Maya parked her dying Honda between a Mercedes and a Maserati, the contrast so absurd it would have been funny under different circumstances. It was nearly 5 a.m. now, that strange hour when night hadn't quite surrendered today. The restaurant should have been closed, but light glowed behind the frosted windows, and 2 men in dark suits flanked the entrance like well-dressed sentries. She approached on legs that threatened to give out, her nurses training the only thing keeping her upright and moving. The guards watched her with the bored attention of people paid to notice everything while appearing to notice nothing. "We're closed," the taller one said, not rudely, but with the finality of someone whose word was law in this small domain. I need to see Dante Reyes. Maya's voice came out steadier than she'd hoped. It's about a debt, a payment issue that his— She swallowed the word she wanted to use. His collectors handled incorrectly. The guards exchanged a glance, something passing between them in that silent language of long partnership. Mr. Reyes doesn't take walk-ins, the second one said, amusement coloring his tone. Especially not from— His eyes raked over her cheap clothes, her scuffed shoes. People with payment issues. Heat flooded Maya's cheeks, but she held her ground. Then tell me who I should talk to. Because what happened tonight wasn't correct. It was an assault. And I'm a witness who can make problems for whoever gave those orders. The threat was empty. She knew it, they probably knew it, but desperation made her reckless. The taller guard's hand moved to his ear, speaking quietly into a communication device she couldn't see. After a moment, surprise flickered across his professional mask. He'll see you. The words emerged reluctantly, as if the guard couldn't quite believe he was saying them. 5 minutes, and— His hand caught her arm, not roughly, but firmly enough to make his point clear. Don't waste his time. Mr. Reyes values efficiency. They led her through the restaurant's main floor, past tables set with pristine white linens and crystal that caught the dim lighting like captured stars. The space was beautiful in an intimidating way, every detail speaking of taste and resources so far beyond her world they might as well exist on different planets. A private dining room occupied the back corner, separated from the main floor by frosted glass panels that suggested privacy without complete isolation. The guard knocked once, waited for a response Maya couldn't hear, then opened the door and stepped aside. Maya entered, and her first thought was that Dante Reyes didn't look like a monster. He sat at the head of a long table, papers spread before him in organized chaos, a laptop open at his elbow. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe early 30s, with dark hair cut precisely, and eyes that assessed her with the kind of attention that made her feel simultaneously visible and transparent. His suit probably cost more than her car, deep charcoal with subtle pinstripes that suggested custom tailoring. 3 other men occupied the room, all watching her with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. But Dante himself simply leaned back in his chair, his expression neutral, and waited for her to speak. Maya's carefully prepared speech evaporated. Instead, what emerged was raw truth. Your men beat my mother tonight. They said she owed $43,000 on a $15,000 loan she took 6 months ago. They broke her ribs. Her voice cracked. They made her bleed in her own home while my 13-year-old sister watched. The room went very still. Dante's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes, a calculation happening too quickly for her to track. Your name, he said quietly. Maya Torres. My mother is Rosa Torres. We live on— I know where you live. He cut her off, not cruelly, but with the efficiency his guard had warned her about. What I don't know is why you're here instead of the police, if your story is true. Because the police don't help people like us. The bitter truth tasted like ashes. Because by the time they fill out paperwork, your men will have come back. And because— She took a breath that hurt her chest. Because I'm hoping that whoever you are, whatever you do, you didn't order this, that there's some mistake I can fix before Friday. Dante stood, and Maya realized he was taller than she'd thought, maybe 6'2", with the kind of presence that filled space without aggression. He moved around the table toward her, and every instinct screamed at her to back away. But she held her ground, tilting her head back to maintain eye contact. You're a nurse, he observed, his gaze taking in details she didn't realize showed, the faint stains on her jacket cuff, the way she held herself, the exhaustion written in every line of her face. Cook County ER, if I'm guessing correctly. Night shift. The accuracy startled her. How— You smell like a hospital antiseptic. Your shoes are the kind nurses wear for 18-hour shifts. And you have the look of someone who's seen too much violence to be easily intimidated, which means you work where violence comes through doors regularly. He paused. What I don't understand is why a smart woman like you walked into a situation where you have no leverage, no protection, and no plan beyond hoping I'm reasonable. Because I have no other options. Maya's hands clenched at her sides. Because my mother is bleeding and broken, and my sister is traumatized, and I will do anything. Her voice strengthened with each word. Anything to keep them safe. Something flickered across Dante's face, too quick to name. He turned to one of the men at the table. Marco. Rosa Torres. $15,000 loan, 6 months ago. Find the file. The man, Marco, moved quickly to a filing cabinet, his movements efficient. Within seconds, he placed a manila folder on the table. Dante opened it, his eyes scanning pages while Maya stood frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. The original loan was legitimate, Dante said after a moment, his voice carefully neutral. 15,000 at 12% annual interest, payment plan established. Your mother made the first 2 payments on time. He turned a page. Then the account was transferred to, his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, an independent contractor who handles difficult collections. Difficult collections, Maya repeated, the euphemism coating her tongue like poison. Is that what you call beating women? It's what I call a system I apparently need to audit. Dante closed the folder with controlled precision. The interest rate has escalated to 40%. The payment terms were shortened. And the collection methods. He looked up at her, and for the first time, she saw something that might have been anger beneath his controlled exterior. Us were never authorized by me. The admission hung between them, shifting the dynamic in ways Maya didn't fully understand. This wasn't the response she'd expected. She'd come here prepared for threats, for dismissal, maybe even for violence, not for what sounded almost like accountability. So you're saying this was a mistake? She needed clarification, needed to understand what this meant for her mother, for Friday's deadline, for the threat that still hung over them. I'm saying someone operating under my name violated protocols that exist for exactly this reason. Dante's tone hardened. Who came to your home? Names or descriptions? Maya closed her eyes, remembering. 3 men. One was tall, maybe 6 feet, with a scar through his left eyebrow, bald. The one who did most of the talking. The others were... She searched her memory. Younger. One had a tattoo on his neck, looked like a snake. They drove a black SUV, no plates visible. Marco was already typing on his phone, his expression grim. That's Victor Salazar. He runs the crew that... He glanced at Dante, something passing between them. That handles the territory south of 18th Street. Not anymore. Dante's words fell like stones into still water, creating ripples Maya could feel but not fully see. He pulled out his phone, pressed a single contact, and waited. When someone answered, his voice dropped to a register that made Maya's spine straighten involuntarily. I need you at Sangre y Oro immediately. Bring Victor Salazar. I don't care where he is or what he's doing. You have 20 minutes. He ended the call and turned back to Maya, his expression unreadable. Sit down. This will take some time to resolve. I should get back to my mother. Even as she said it, Maya knew she couldn't leave. Not yet. Not until she had something concrete, some assurance that this wasn't just another manipulation. Marco, send a doctor to... Dante glanced at the file. The Torres residence. Full examination. Whatever treatment is necessary. Bill it to my personal account. He looked at Maya. Your mother will be cared for. You'll stay here until we sort out exactly what happened and why. It wasn't a request, but neither was it a threat. Maya found herself sitting in a leather chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent, watching this man who controlled so much of Chicago's underworld make calls and issue orders with the efficiency of a CEO managing a legitimate corporation. Which, she supposed, he was. The difference was just in what he sold and how he enforced payment. 23 minutes later, Maya counted every one. Her eyes on the clock mounted on the wall. The door opened. The man who entered looked like he'd been interrupted from sleep, his shirt hastily buttoned and his hair uncombed. But he moved with the confidence of someone high in whatever hierarchy governed Dante's organization. Boss? His eyes found Dante, then slid to Maya with curiosity that quickly shuddered into professional neutrality. I have Salazar outside. He's nervous. He should be. Dante stood, buttoning his suit jacket with movements that suggested ritual preparation. Bring him in, and make sure everyone from his crew who was involved in tonight's collection is here within the hour. All of them. Maya watched as Victor Salazar was escorted into the room, and she felt her hands clench involuntarily. This was the man. Even without the scar through his eyebrow visible in the dim light of her apartment, she recognized the swagger. The way he held himself like violence was always an option just beneath the surface. His swagger evaporated when he saw Dante's expression. Mr. Reyes, Salazar started, but Dante raised one hand, and silence fell so completely that Maya could hear her own heartbeat. The Torres family, Dante said quietly. Tell me about the collection you performed approximately. He checked his watch. 3 hours ago. Salazar's eyes darted to Maya, recognition and calculation playing across his features. Standard collection, boss. Debtor was behind on payments, needed motivation to take the deadline seriously. Nothing that won't heal. The casual dismissal of her mother's injuries ignited fury in Maya's chest. She started to stand, but Dante's voice stopped her before she could speak. Standard collection, he repeated, his tone conversational, almost curious. And the interest rate you quoted, Mrs. Torres? The $43,000 on a $15,000 loan? Salazar shifted his weight, and Maya could see sweat beginning to bead on his forehead despite the room's cool temperature. The account was flagged as high risk. The contractor rate applies. You were just operating outside your authority. Dante moved closer, and though he didn't touch Salazar, the other man flinched. You escalated interest rates I didn't approve of. You shortened payment terms I didn't authorize. And you put your hands on a civilian in a manner that violates every protocol this organization has. She's nobody! Salazar's composure cracked, desperation making him reckless. Just another debtor trying to... The movement was so fast, Maya almost missed it. One moment Dante stood 3 feet from Salazar. The next, his hand was wrapped around the other man's throat, slamming him against the wall with force that made the framed artwork rattle. Dante's voice emerged deadly quiet, is a nurse who works 18-hour shifts to keep her family fed. Her mother is a widow who took a legitimate loan when her husband died. Her sister is 13 years old, and you made them all afraid in their own home because you're too stupid and too greedy to follow basic operational guidelines. Salazar's face was turning purple, his hands scrabbling uselessly at Dante's grip. The other men in the room watched with expressions that suggested this was not entirely unexpected, that they'd seen their boss's temper before and knew better than to intervene. Maya should have been terrified. Some part of her was, but a larger part felt a savage satisfaction watching the man who had hurt her mother struggle for breath. Dante held him there for another few seconds, then released him with a shove that sent Salazar stumbling. You're done, not just with this crew, but with this city. You have until sunrise to be gone. If I see you, if I hear about you, if your name so much as crosses my desk again. He left the threat unfinished, which made it somehow more terrifying than any specific promise of violence could have been. Salazar fled, his exit lacking any of the swagger he'd entered with. Maya sat frozen, processing what she'd just witnessed. This was power in its rawest form, not the abstract authority of hospital administrators or the distant control of politicians, but immediate, physical, undeniable force. And it had been deployed on her behalf. Dante turned back to her, his breathing slightly elevated, the first crack in his controlled exterior she'd seen. The debt is forgiven, all of it, including the original $15,000. Your mother's medical expenses will be covered, and you have my word that no one from my organization will come near your family again. Maya's mind struggled to process the sudden reversal. Why? The question emerged before she could consider whether challenging him was wise. Why would you do this for us? We're nobody to you. Something crossed Dante's face, complex and quickly hidden. Because I built this empire on rules, he said quietly. On the understanding that there are lines we don't cross, ways we don't operate. When my people violate those rules, especially with violence against civilians who pose no threat, he paused, it reflects on me. It suggests I tolerate chaos and cruelty that I've spent years eliminating. It was a practical answer, a business answer, but Maya sensed something beneath it, something personal that he wouldn't or couldn't articulate. Thank you. The words felt inadequate for what he'd just given her. Safety, security, the lifting of a crushing weight she'd thought would destroy them. I don't know how to... You don't owe me gratitude. Dante's tone shifted, becoming businesslike again, as if the moment of violence had never happened. You came here to protect your family. You showed courage that most people don't possess. That deserves respect, not exploitation. Marco approached quietly, speaking in tones too low for Maya to hear. Dante nodded, then looked at her again. The doctor is with your mother. He reports that while her injuries are serious, they're not life-threatening. Broken ribs, as you diagnosed, facial trauma. But she'll heal completely with proper care and rest. Relief made Maya's knees weak. She had to grip the chair arm to stay upright. I need to go to her. My sister... One of my people will drive you. Dante gestured to another man who'd been standing silently by the door. But before you go, I need to know something. Did you come here planning to die? Because walking into this building, confronting me about my organization's failures, that took either extraordinary courage or a complete disregard for your own safety. Maya considered the question honestly. Both, maybe. I came here knowing I might not leave, but I also came knowing that if I did nothing, if I let fear stop me, then we were already dead, just slowly, crushed by debt and terror until there was nothing left of us. So yes, I was terrified, but I was more terrified of the alternative. Dante studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. You're an interesting woman, Maya Torres. Most people in your situation would have run or hidden or tried to negotiate from a position of weakness. You walked straight into danger and demanded accountability. That's... He paused, seeming to search for the right word. Rare. It's desperation, Maya corrected, exhaustion suddenly crushing down on her with the adrenaline beginning to fade. There's nothing special about wanting to protect your family. There's everything special about succeeding. Dante nodded to his man. Take her home. Make sure the doctor has everything he needs, and... He looked at Maya again. Someone will check on your family tomorrow. Not for collection, not for intimidation, just to ensure you're all safe and recovering. You'll see the same face each time, so you'll know it's legitimate. If anyone else approaches you, anyone at all, you call this number. He handed her a business card with nothing printed on it except a phone number in simple black type. Maya took the card, her fingers brushing his for just a moment. I still don't understand why. Because some situations require correction, Dante said. And because your sister is 13, she shouldn't have to learn that the world is only cruel and that no one cares. Let her keep some innocence a little longer. That's reason enough. The words carried weight that suggested personal history, old wounds that had never quite healed. Maya wanted to ask, wanted to understand the man behind the reputation, but the driver was already waiting, and her mother needed her. As she stood to leave, Dante spoke one more time. Maya, what you did tonight, coming here, don't do it again. Don't ever put yourself in this kind of danger for any reason. You got lucky that I'm not the monster you expected to find. Others in my position would have made you disappear for knowing too much, seeing too much. Promise me you understand that. Maya met his eyes, seeing genuine concern beneath the warning. I promise. And Mr. Reyes, thank you for everything. He nodded once, dismissing her thanks as unnecessary. But as Maya left the restaurant, escorted by a man whose expression never changed and whose gun was visible beneath his jacket, she couldn't shake the image of Dante's face when he slammed Salazar against the wall. Violence in her defense. Power deployed with precision. And beneath it all, something that looked almost like recognition, as if he'd seen something in her desperate courage that resonated with his own past. The drive home took them through Chicago as dawn began breaking, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed impossible after the night's darkness. Maya's phone buzzed continuously with texts from Bella, each one reporting on their mother's condition, the doctor's quiet competence, the way he'd set up pain medication and antibiotics, and promised to return in the morning. When Maya finally walked back into their apartment, she found her mother sleeping peacefully, her breathing even and unlabored, her face cleaned of blood and her injuries properly dressed. Bella launched herself into Maya's arms, sobbing with relief that came from hours of holding terror at bay. It's over, Maya whispered into her sister's hair, holding her tight. We're safe now. I promise we're safe. She believed it too, though somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice wondered what price that safety might eventually carry, and whether the man who'd granted it might someday require payment of a different kind. The following days passed in a haze of healing and hypervigilance. Maya returned to her shifts at Cook County, moving through the familiar rhythms of the ER, while part of her mind remained anchored to that pre-dawn meeting with Dante Reyes. She'd replayed the encounter countless times, analyzing every word, every gesture, trying to reconcile the man who'd forgiven $43,000 with the reputation that made hardened criminals nervous. Her mother recovered slowly but steadily. The doctor Dante had sent, a quiet man in his 50s who introduced himself simply as Dr. Chen, returned 3 times that first week, monitoring Rosa's progress with a thoroughness that rivaled any specialist Maya had worked with. He never asked for payment, never mentioned Dante's name, simply provided excellent care and left detailed instructions that Maya followed religiously. On the 8th day after her confrontation at Sangre y Oro, Maya arrived home from her shift to find a black sedan parked across from their building. The same car had been there yesterday, and the day before. Always the same position, always the same driver visible through the tinted windows. She approached cautiously, her hand wrapped around the pepper spray in her pocket, a purchase she'd made the day after realizing how helpless they'd been against Salazar's crew. The driver's window rolled down as she neared, revealing a woman in her late 20s with sharp features and sharper eyes. Maya Torres? The woman's voice carried authority without aggression. I'm Sophia Ruiz. Mr. Reyes asked me to check on your family's recovery. This was the consistent face Dante had promised, Maya realized. The legitimate contact that would distinguish his people from any potential threats. She studied Sophia carefully, noting the professional bearing, the expensive watch, the gun barely concealed beneath her tailored jacket. We're fine, Maya said, keeping her distance. My mother is healing. My sister is back in school. You can tell Mr. Reyes his help was appreciated. But we don't need continued surveillance. Sophia's lips quivered in something that wasn't quite a smile. I'm not surveillance. I'm insured. Mr. Reyes wanted to ensure that word of Salazar's departure didn't create any misunderstandings about your family's status. There were questions about why a debt was forgiven, why a crew leader vanished overnight. This, she gestured to herself in the car, makes it clear that you're under protection, not up for grabs. The casual reference to her family as potential targets made Maya's stomach clench. How long does this insurance last? As long as necessary. Sophia's expression softened fractionally. Look, I know this isn't the life you chose, but you walked into Reyes Holdings and made yourself visible to people who now know your face, your address, your vulnerabilities. The boss is making sure that visibility comes with protection, not consequences. Let him do that. Maya wanted to argue, to insist they could take care of themselves, but the memory of her mother's broken body and Bella's terrified eyes was too fresh. Fine, but I don't want my sister knowing she's being watched. She's already having nightmares. She won't see me unless she needs to. Sophia handed Maya a card identical to the one Dante had given her, blank except for a phone number. This reaches me directly, 24/7. Anything that feels wrong, anyone who approaches you with questions about the boss or that night, you call immediately. Maya pocketed the card next to Dante's, feeling the weight of obligations she hadn't asked for but couldn't refuse. Why does he care this much? We're nobody to him. Sophia studied her with an intensity that made Maya feel exposed. You're the woman who walked into a lion's den unarmed and demanded justice. That's not anybody. That's someone who reminded the boss why he built his empire with rules instead of just brutality. She paused. And between you and me? I've worked for Dante Reyes for 6 years. I've never seen him personally handle debt forgiveness or assign continuous protection to a civilian family. Whatever you are to him, it's not nobody. The statement stayed with Maya long after Sophia drove away, circling through her mind during quiet moments at work, during dinner with her mother and sister, during the sleepless hours when she lay awake wondering what she'd set in motion. 3 weeks after that dawn meeting, Maya's carefully reconstructed routine shattered again. She was restocking supplies in the ER's trauma bay when her supervisor approached with an expression Maya had learned to read as complicated news. Torres, there's someone here to see you. Says it's personal, not medical. I told him visiting hours for staff are. I'll wait as long as necessary. The voice came from behind her supervisor, smooth and familiar despite Maya having heard it only once. But I'd prefer not to disrupt Ms. Torres's work more than necessary. Maya turned to find Dante Reyes standing in her emergency room, looking absurdly out of place in his charcoal suit among the fluorescent lights and vinyl floors. Every head in the vicinity had turned, nurses and doctors alike registering the presence of someone who clearly didn't belong, but commanded attention anyway. Her supervisor's eyes widened slightly. Recognition or self-preservation, Maya couldn't tell which. Take your break, Torres. 30 minutes. She disappeared quickly, and Maya noticed several other staff members suddenly finding reasons to be elsewhere. What are you doing here? Maya kept her voice low, acutely aware of the curious stares. If this is about my family, your family is fine. Sophia reports they're recovering well. Dante's eyes scanned the ER, with the same assessing attention he'd given her at Sangre y Oro. This is about something else. Is there somewhere we can talk privately? Maya hesitated, then led him to the small break room reserved for nursing staff. It was empty, the coffee pot half full and the table scattered with medical journals and someone's forgotten lunch bag. Dante looked even more incongruous here, his expensive suit and controlled presence clashing with the shabby furniture and flickering fluorescent light. You shouldn't be here, Maya said as soon as the door closed. People will talk. They'll connect you to my family, to what happened. People already talk. Dante leaned against the counter, his posture deceptively casual. And the connection between us is already established, whether I visit your workplace or not. But that's not why I came. I have a proposition for you. Maya's defenses rose immediately. I don't want money. I don't want favors. You already did more than... I want to hire you. The interruption was gentle but firm. As a private nurse for my organization, specifically for situations where my people are injured but can't or won't go to a hospital. The request was so unexpected that Maya actually laughed, the sound emerging sharp and incredulous. You want me to be your personal ER? To patch up criminals who get shot or stabbed while doing whatever illegal things you do? I want to employ a skilled medical professional who understands discretion and has already demonstrated remarkable courage under pressure. Dante's expression remained neutral, but something in his tone suggested this was important beyond the practical logistics. The pay would be triple your current salary. The hours would be irregular but far fewer than you work now, and the work would be illegal, Maya finished. Aiding and abetting, obstruction of justice, probably a dozen other charges that would cost me my license and land me in prison. Legal gray area, Dante corrected. You wouldn't be treating gunshot wounds from criminal activity. You'd be providing care to people who have reasons, sometimes legitimate reasons, for avoiding hospitals, privacy concerns, immigration status, previous warrants that have nothing to do with their current injuries. The same people who come to this ER but get reported to police before they're treated. He wasn't wrong. Maya had seen it countless times. Patients who needed help but feared the consequences of seeking it, whose injuries got documented and reported before their wounds were even cleaned. The system was designed to catch criminals, but it also caught victims, witnesses, and people whose only crime was existing in the wrong place. Why me? She asked. You clearly have resources. You could hire any number of doctors or nurses who'd jump at that salary. Because I watched you walk into my restaurant knowing you might die, and you did it anyway to protect your family. Dante pushed off from the counter, closing some of the distance between them. That kind of loyalty, that kind of courage, it can't be bought. It has to be earned through circumstance, and you've already proven you have it. Maya shook her head, trying to clear the temptation from her mind. Because it was tempting. God help her, it was tempting. Triple her salary would mean Bella could go to a better school, her mother could stop working the night shift cleaning offices, they could move out of their apartment where violence had shattered their sense of safety. I became a nurse to help people, she said quietly, not to enable a criminal organization. And how many people have you helped in this ER who went right back to the situations that injured them? Dante's question cut deep because Maya knew the answer. How many domestic violence victims did you patch up knowing they'd return to their abusers? How many overdoses did you reverse knowing the patient would use again the next day? You help people here despite knowing the system is broken. I'm offering you a chance to help people outside the system entirely. That's a pretty speech, Maya said, hearing the bitterness in her own voice. But let's be honest about what this is. You want someone you can control, someone who owes you, someone who'll look the other way when your people come bleeding from crimes they committed. Dante's jaw tightened fractionally. I want someone I can trust. There's a difference. And as for owing me, you don't. The debt was forgiven. Your family's protection is not contingent on your answer to this offer. Say no and nothing changes. Sophia continues her rounds. Your mother heals. Your sister goes to school safely. This is a separate proposition based on mutual benefit, not coercion. Maya studied his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the hidden threat. She'd gotten good at reading people in the ER, at seeing through the stories patients told about how they got injured, about whether they'd take their medication, about whether they'd come back for follow-up. But Dante's expression revealed nothing except patient waiting. I need time to think about it, she said finally. Of course. He reached into his jacket. Maya's hand instinctively moved toward her pepper spray, and pulled out a plain envelope. This contains details about compensation, expectations, and the legal protections we'd put in place. No names, nothing that could be traced back to you if you decide against it. Read it over. Take as long as you need. Maya accepted the envelope, feeling its weight in her hand like a physical representation of the choice being offered. And if I say no? Then I'll find someone else, and you'll never hear from me again beyond the security Sophia provides. Dante moved toward the door, then paused. But Maya, you have a gift for staying calm in crisis, for making life or death decisions under pressure. This city is full of people who need that gift, and the hospital system can't or won't help them all. Think about that before you decide. He left as quietly as he'd arrived, and Maya stood alone in the break room, holding an envelope that might contain her future or her destruction. She couldn't tell which. That night, after Bella was asleep and her mother was resting comfortably, Maya sat at their small kitchen table and opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, typed cleanly with no letterhead or identifying marks. Compensation: $120,000 annually, paid monthly in cash. Hours: on-call availability, average, 10 to 15 hours per week. Responsibilities: provide emergency medical care to designated individuals, maintain confidentiality, stock and manage private medical supplies. Legal protection: all services performed under privacy agreements, attorney provided for any legal complications, licensing protection guaranteed. Term: 1-year contract, renewable by mutual agreement. Termination: either party may end arrangement with 30 days' notice, no penalties. The terms were generous, almost suspiciously generous. Maya's nursing salary barely covered their expenses. This would transform their lives. But it would also transform her, pulling her into Dante's world in ways that couldn't be undone. She thought about the patients she'd lost because they came to the ER too late, too afraid of consequences to seek help earlier. She thought about the woman last week who died from an infection because she'd waited 5 days to come in, terrified that treating her stab wound would lead to questions about the abusive partner she couldn't escape. She thought about all the people who fell through the cracks of a system designed to help but too broken to reach everyone. And she thought about Dante Reyes, slamming Victor Salazar against the wall for hurting her mother. Violence deployed with precision, power used to correct rather than exploit. Maybe he was exactly the monster his reputation suggested, and this was just a more sophisticated form of manipulation. Or maybe, and this was the possibility that terrified her most, maybe he was something more complicated. Someone who operated in the shadows but tried to do it with rules, with some kind of warped honor. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Maya pulled out her phone and stared at the blank business card Dante had given her, the single phone number that would connect her to a decision that felt irrevocable. She didn't call that night, or the next, but she kept the envelope, reading it over until she had the terms memorized, until the numbers and conditions became a mantra she couldn't escape. 1 week later, Maya was triaging a teenager with a gunshot wound to the shoulder, gang-related, she suspected, though the kid wasn't talking, when she watched him tense as police officers approached his bed. His eyes went wide with terror that had nothing to do with his injury, and everything to do with the consequences of treatment. She thought about how Dante had described his proposal, helping people outside the system, and she made her decision. That night, she called the number. Dante answered on the second ring, his voice giving no indication of surprise despite the late hour. Maya, I have conditions, she said without preamble. If I do this, I need guarantees. Name them. First, I don't treat anyone who's actively committing a crime. I'm not patching someone up so they can go back out and hurt more people. Second, if I determine someone needs hospital care, actual emergency care, you don't stop me from sending them. Third, my family never knows about this. As far as they're concerned, I picked up extra shifts at a private clinic. Silence stretched for 3 heartbeats before Dante responded. Agreed to all 3. Anything else? Yes, I want to meet the people I'll be treating. Before I agree to anything officially, I want to see your operation. Understand who I'd be helping. If it's what you said, people who need care but can't access it through normal channels, fine. But if it's just covering up crimes, I walk away. No penalties, no consequences. That's fair. Dante's tone carried something that might have been respect. Tomorrow night, I'll have Sophia pick you up after your shift ends at 11. You'll see everything, then you decide. If you walk away, nothing changes. You have my word. Your word, Maya repeated. The word of a man who runs half of Chicago's underworld. The word of a man who's kept every promise he's made to you so far. The quiet intensity in his voice made her breath catch. I may not be what you consider good, Maya, but I am what I claim to be. That has to be enough. The call ended, and Maya sat in the darkness of her bedroom, wondering if she'd just agreed to salvation or damnation, and whether there was any meaningful difference between the two. The next evening, Sophia arrived exactly as promised, her black sedan pulling up to the hospital's staff entrance at 11:07 p.m. Maya climbed in, her heart hammering with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Where are we going? She asked, as Sophia pulled into traffic. Somewhere that will answer your questions better than words could. Sophia navigated through Chicago's late-night streets with practiced ease. The boss wants you to understand what you'd be part of before you commit. They drove for 20 minutes, leaving the hospital district for an industrial area Maya vaguely recognized as the edge of Dante's territory. Sophia pulled into a warehouse complex that looked abandoned from the outside, but the security cameras mounted at intervals told a different story. Inside, the warehouse had been transformed into something unexpected. Medical equipment lined one wall, professional grade, the kind of supplies that cost thousands. A treatment area was set up with proper lighting, clean surfaces, and organized supplies that rivaled some hospital ERs Maya had worked in. And in the waiting area, sitting on mismatched chairs, were people. An elderly woman cradling her arm at an angle that suggested a broken wrist. A young man with a gash across his forehead that had been crudely bandaged. A pregnant woman who looked exhausted and in pain. A teenager with burns on his hands. None of them looked like hardened criminals. They looked like people from Maya's neighborhood, from the communities she served every day in the ER. Dante emerged from a back office, and the relief on several faces was visible. He spoke quietly to the elderly woman in Spanish. Maya caught enough to understand he was promising help was here, then turned to Maya. This is the operation, he said simply. 3 nights a week, Sophia and others bring people here who need medical care but can't or won't access hospitals. Some are undocumented and fear deportation. Some have outstanding warrants for minor offenses. Some are running from abusive situations and can't risk being found. Some just can't afford emergency room bills that would bankrupt them. Maya moved closer to the waiting patients, her nurse's instincts automatically assessing their conditions. Who's been treating them while you look for someone permanent? Dr. Chen, when he's available, a retired paramedic, sometimes no one, and they just wait until their injuries heal on their own or get worse. Dante's expression remained neutral, but his tone carried frustration. It's not enough. They deserve better. The elderly woman spoke up then, her English heavily accented but clear. Please, señorita, my wrist, I fell at the factory where I clean. But if I go to the hospital, they report to immigration. I have grandbabies here, citizens. I cannot risk deportation. Maya knelt beside her, gently examining the injury with practiced hands. Definitely broken, maybe in 2 places. Needed proper setting and casting. How long ago did this happen? 3 days. The woman's eyes filled with tears. It hurts very much. 3 days of unnecessary suffering because the system offered no safe path to care. Maya looked up at Dante, seeing the challenge in his expression. This was his answer to her concerns about enabling crime. These weren't criminals. They were casualties of a system that punished vulnerability. I'll need proper supplies, Maya heard herself say. X-ray capability, or at least access to imaging. Pain medication, antibiotics, casting materials. And I'll need to know that if someone comes in with a condition I can't handle here, you'll let me send them to a real hospital without argument. Dante's expression shifted, something that looked almost like relief crossing his features. Whatever you need. Money is not an object. Equipment, supplies, support staff, you tell me what's required and you'll have it. Maya stood, looking around the warehouse at the makeshift clinic, at the people waiting for help, at the man who'd built this imperfect solution to an impossible problem. I have one more condition. I don't want to know what else happens in your organization. I treat patients here. I maintain confidentiality, but I don't want information about your other operations. I'm a nurse, not an accomplice. Can you live with that boundary? I can live with it. Dante extended his hand. Do we have an agreement? Maya looked at his hand, at the decision it represented. She thought about her mother's injuries, about Bella's nightmares, about the teenager in the ER who'd been terrified of police, about the woman with the broken wrist who'd suffered for days rather than risk her family's future. She thought about all the ways the world was broken and all the imperfect attempts to fix small pieces of it. She shook his hand. We have an agreement. I start tonight. That woman needs her wrist set before the bones begin healing wrong. For the next 4 hours, Maya worked. She set the elderly woman's wrist with careful precision, fashioning a proper cast from supplies Dante had stockpiled. She cleaned and stitched the young man's head wound, determining he likely had a mild concussion and giving detailed instructions for monitoring. She examined the pregnant woman, 8 months along with dangerously high blood pressure, and insisted on an immediate hospital transfer despite the woman's protests. I don't care about your immigration status, Maya said firmly. Your baby's life is at risk. We're going to the hospital and Mr. Reyes is going to make sure you're treated and released without any reports filed, right? She looked at Dante, making it clear this was non-negotiable. Right, he confirmed without hesitation. Sophia, take her to Northwestern. Use the private entrance. I'll call ahead. The woman left crying with gratitude, and Maya felt something settle in her chest. This was right. Complicated and ethically gray, and probably illegal in ways she didn't want to examine too closely, but right in the way that mattered, helping people who had nowhere else to turn. As the last patient departed near 4 a.m., Maya cleaned her equipment with methodical precision, aware of Dante watching from across the room. You're good at this, he observed. Better than I expected, and my expectations were already high. This is what I trained for. Maya stripped off her gloves, disposing of them properly. Helping people in crisis. The ER just happens to come with bureaucracy and police reports and insurance paperwork that prevents a lot of people from getting the help they need. Dante moved closer, leaning against the exam table she'd been using. You said you had questions before you could commit fully. Did tonight answer them? Maya considered the question honestly. Some. I saw that you're not just patching up criminals, but I also saw a system you've built that operates entirely outside legal oversight. What happens if I make a mistake? If someone dies under my care here? Then we handle it quietly and completely. His answer was immediate and unflinching. I protect my people, Maya. That includes you now. If there's a malpractice issue, if there's any legal complication, you'll have the best lawyers, the best support, whatever you need. But, his tone hardened slightly, I'll also expect you to be honest about your capabilities. If you can't handle something, if you need resources we don't have, you tell me immediately. No ego, no hesitation. Agreed? Agreed. Maya met his eyes, seeing the seriousness there. And what about the other patients? The ones who are criminals, who are injured doing whatever it is you actually do for a living? Because I know this clinic isn't the full picture. Dante's expression became unreadable. Those situations are handled differently by different people. You won't see that side of things unless you choose to. This clinic, these patients, they're separate from operational medicine. I'm offering you a choice to help people who genuinely need it, not asking you to become complicit in violence. It should have been reassuring. Maybe it was. But it also highlighted the compartmentalization of his world, the way he could separate helping vulnerable immigrants from whatever else he did in the darkness. Maya wondered if she'd eventually become that compartmentalized too, able to heal here and ignore what happened elsewhere. I should get home, she said, suddenly exhausted beyond anything physical fatigue could explain. My shift at the hospital starts at 3 this afternoon. Sophia will take you, but Maya. Dante's hand caught her arm gently as she turned to leave. Thank you. For giving this a chance. For seeing past what you assumed I was to what I'm trying to build here. His hand was warm through her thin jacket, and Maya was suddenly very aware of how close they were standing, of the intensity in his dark eyes, of the way her pulse kicked up in response to his proximity. She stepped back, breaking the contact, confused by her own reaction. Don't thank me yet, she said, aiming for lightness and mostly succeeding. Wait until you see my supply requests. Proper medical equipment isn't cheap. His smile was brief but genuine. I think I can manage. Good night, Maya. Good night. Sophia drove her home through a city beginning to wake, delivery trucks rumbling through streets and early commuters emerging from apartment buildings. Maya stared out the window, watching Chicago transform from Dante's nighttime domain back into the daylight world of normal people with normal problems. She'd crossed a line tonight. She knew it, felt it in her bones like the ache after a long shift. But she'd also helped people who had no other options, used her skills in a way that felt pure despite the complicated circumstances. The question was whether she could maintain that purity, or whether proximity to Dante's world would eventually corrupt it into something she couldn't recognize. Only time would tell. And by then, it might be too late to walk away. The clinic became Maya's second life over the following months, a secret existence that ran parallel to her hospital shifts and family responsibilities. 3 nights a week, Sophia would collect her after work, and Maya would spend hours treating the people who fell through society's cracks: immigrants, abuse survivors, people with warrants for unpaid parking tickets who couldn't risk a hospital visit, teenagers thrown out by their families who had nowhere else to turn. She never asked Dante for the expensive equipment. He simply provided it. Within 2 weeks, the warehouse had a portable X-ray machine. A month later, a proper pharmacy was set up with locked cabinets and inventory systems. By the 3rd month, Maya had 2 medical assistants, both formerly undocumented women she'd treated, now on Dante's payroll, and fiercely loyal to the clinic that had saved them. Her family noticed the changes that came with tripled income. Maya moved them to a better apartment in a safer neighborhood, enrolled Bella in a private school where metal detectors weren't standard equipment, and ensured her mother could finally retire from the night shifts that had been destroying her health. She explained it all as extra work at a private clinic, which wasn't technically a lie. Her mother asked a few questions, too grateful for the stability to examine its source too closely. But Bella, sharp and observant at 13, watched Maya with increasingly skeptical eyes. You're different, her sister said one evening as they sat doing homework at their new dining table. You come home smelling like the hospital, but your scrubs are always clean. And Sophia, she's not a hospital administrator, is she? Maya looked up from the medical journal she'd been reviewing, meeting Bella's knowing gaze. What makes you say that? Because hospital administrators don't carry guns or watch our building like they're expecting trouble. Bella's voice was matter-of-fact rather than accusatory. And because I'm not stupid, Maya, I know what happened with Mama. I know who helped us, and I know you're doing something for him now to pay it back. The perceptiveness shouldn't have surprised Maya. Bella had grown up fast after their father died, had learned to read situations and people with survival instincts that children shouldn't need to develop. Lying to her would be both insulting and ineffective. I'm helping people who can't access normal health care, Maya said carefully. People in situations like Mama was in. That's the truth, Bella. Everything else, the details about who organizes it or why, those are complicated. But what I do there, the actual work, it's just nursing. I promise you that. Bella studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. But Maya? Be careful. People like him, people with that much power, they don't give things for free. Eventually, they'll want something back that's bigger than you want to give. The warning echoed in Maya's mind 2 weeks later when Dante himself appeared at the clinic instead of just Sophia. He arrived near midnight, his suit immaculate despite the late hour, and asked to speak with her privately once she'd finished with the last patient, a construction worker with a badly infected hand that Maya had cleaned and prescribed antibiotics for. In the small office that had been set up for administrative work, Dante closed the door and turned to face her with an expression she'd learned to read as seriously troubled. I have a problem, he said without preamble, and I need to ask you for something that goes beyond our agreement. Maya's defenses rose immediately, Bella's warning fresh in her mind. What kind of problem? The kind that involves violence I didn't authorize, and consequences that will affect innocent people if I don't handle it correctly. Dante moved to the window overlooking the warehouse floor, his posture tense. There's a situation developing with a rival organization. The Moretti family from New York is trying to move into Chicago, and they're doing it by targeting civilians in my territory, restaurant owners, shopkeepers, families. They're sending a message that I can't protect the people who pay me for protection. And you're telling me why? Maya kept her voice neutral, though her heart rate had increased. This sounds like your world, not mine. I treat patients. I don't get involved in territorial disputes. I'm telling you because tomorrow night, the Morettis are planning an assault on a community center in Pilsen, your old neighborhood. There will be families there, children, people who have nothing to do with my business, but will be caught in a crossfire designed to make me look weak. He turned to face her fully. I can stop it. I have the intelligence, the resources, the people. But to do it without massive casualties on both sides, I need someone there who can handle medical emergencies immediately if things go wrong. Maya's blood ran cold. You want me in a gang war? Are you insane? I want you in a protected position, half a block away, ready to treat anyone who gets injured, civilian or otherwise, before they bleed out waiting for ambulances that might not come fast enough to that neighborhood. Dante's voice remained calm, but intensity radiated from him. I'm trying to prevent violence, Maya. But if prevention fails, I need to minimize the damage. You're the only person I trust to do that. No. The word emerged flat and absolute. That's not what I signed up for. I treat people here in a controlled environment. I don't put myself in danger zones to patch up gang warfare casualties. Even if those casualties include children who happen to be at the community center, families attending a quinceañera celebration? Dante's question cut deep, because that's what the Morettis are counting on. That I'll either let innocent people get hurt or respond with so much force that I become the monster everyone believes I am. Maya paced the small office, her mind racing. Why that community center? Why target civilians? Because it's the location of a weekly meeting where local business owners gather. The Morettis think if they disrupt it, make it too dangerous to continue, they can break the network of loyalty I've built. They don't care that it's also where those business owners' families celebrate, where their children play, where their community gathers. His frustration was visible now, cracks showing in his usual control. I've spent years trying to operate with rules, with boundaries that separate my business from civilian life. They're trying to erase those boundaries. And you think responding to their violence with your own violence is the answer? I think protecting people who can't protect themselves is the answer, regardless of what form that protection takes. Dante moved closer, his dark eyes searching hers. I'm not asking you to approve of what I do, Maya. I'm asking you to help me do it with as little bloodshed as possible. That's all. Maya wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed at her to maintain the boundaries she'd established, to keep herself separate from the violent aspects of Dante's world. But the image of children caught in crossfire, of families celebrating a quinceañera when bullets started flying, wouldn't leave her mind. If I agree, she said slowly, I have conditions. I'm there strictly as medical support. I don't participate in the violence. I don't provide intelligence. I don't do anything except treat injured people. And the second it's over, I leave. No lingering, no cleanup, no involvement in whatever aftermath you deal with. Agreed to all of it. Dante's relief was visible. You'll be in an armored vehicle with 2 of my best people. The moment shots are fired, if they're fired, you stay protected and only emerge once the area is secure. I won't put you in unnecessary danger. All danger in this situation is unnecessary, Maya countered. But even as she said it, she knew she'd already decided. When do we leave? Tomorrow at 7. The Morettis plan their move at 8:30, when the quinceañera will be in full celebration. He paused, then added quietly, Thank you, Maya. I know this isn't what you wanted when you agreed to run the clinic. No, it's not. She met his eyes, seeing the complexity there. The man who built empires on violence, trying to minimize the damage that violence caused. But if we're going to do this, I need you to promise me something. Promise that you're actually trying to protect those people, not just using them as pawns in your territorial games. Because if I find out this is manipulation, if those families are just leverage to you, they're not. The vehemence in his voice stopped her mid-sentence. When I was 12, my mother was killed in crossfire between gangs fighting over territory in our neighborhood. She was coming home from church, wrong place, wrong time. No one even knew her name when they filed the report. His jaw clenched. I built this organization with rules specifically so that wouldn't happen to other people's mothers. I won't let the Morettis erase those rules. The admission hung between them, explaining so much about the man who deployed violence with precision, but tried to keep it separate from civilian life. Maya saw the 12-year-old in his eyes, the boy who'd lost everything to senseless gang warfare and grown into someone determined to bring order to chaos, even if that order was itself violent. I'm sorry, she said softly, about your mother. And I'm sorry you have to keep fighting the same battle that killed her. So am I. Dante's expression shuddered again, control reasserting itself. But that's my burden, not yours. Tomorrow, you focus on the medicine. Let me handle everything else. The next evening arrived with ominous speed. Maya prepared her medical kit with trembling hands, packing supplies for gunshot wounds, crush injuries, burns. Everything her ER training had taught her might result from armed conflict. Sophia picked her up at 6:30, her usual professional demeanor replaced by visible tension. The boss is already positioned, Sophia said as they drove toward Pilsen. He's trying one last time to negotiate with the Moretti representative, convince them to back off without violence. But, she glanced at Maya, prepare for the worst. The armored vehicle Sophia led her to was actually a modified ambulance equipped with medical supplies and reinforced with bulletproof plating that made it handle like a tank. 2 of Dante's men sat in the front, both armed but greeting Maya with respectful nods. They parked half a block from the community center, close enough to respond quickly, but positioned behind a building that would provide cover. Through the tinted windows, Maya could see families arriving for the celebration, women in elegant dresses, men in suits, children in their finest clothes, excited and laughing. Normal people, innocent people, about to be caught in a war they hadn't asked for. Maya's phone buzzed, a text from Dante. Negotiations failed, Moretti's incoming, stay protected, I'll minimize casualties. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she watched the street, seeing Dante's people positioned strategically, on rooftops, in doorways, creating a perimeter that would hopefully contain any violence. But she also saw the black SUVs that appeared from the opposite direction, moving with predatory purpose toward the community center. Everything happened in seconds. The Moretti vehicles accelerated suddenly. Dante's people moved to intercept, and Maya watched in horror as one of the SUVs veered toward the community center's entrance where a family of 5 was just arriving, clearly intending to drive straight into the building. Then Dante's car, she recognized it from the night at Sangre y Oro, shot forward from a side street, slamming into the Moretti SUV with enough force to redirect it away from the entrance and into a parked vehicle. The crash was tremendous, the sound of metal on metal echoing through the street. Gunfire erupted. Maya instinctively ducked, even though the armored vehicle protected her. Through the window, she saw Dante's people moving with practiced precision, not shooting wildly, but with controlled purpose, aiming to disable rather than kill. The Morettis returned fire, but they were caught in a crossfire that made their position untenable. It was over in less than 3 minutes. The surviving Moretti vehicles retreated at high speed, leaving 2 disabled SUVs and multiple injured men. Dante emerged from his wrecked car, blood running down the side of his face, barking orders that got his people moving immediately. "We're up," Sophia said, already opening the ambulance doors. "Civilians first, then our people, then theirs." Maya grabbed her kit and ran toward the community center, where people were screaming and scrambling for cover. She found an elderly man who'd been knocked down in the panic, his hip possibly broken. A woman with glass cuts from the shattered front window. A child with a twisted ankle from running. She worked with focused intensity, triaging injuries and providing immediate care, while Sophia coordinated transport for the most seriously injured to nearby hospitals. The civilians were shaken but mostly unharmed. Dante's interception had worked. He'd stopped the worst from happening. Then she saw him, still standing despite the blood, streaming from a head wound, directing his people with calm authority. When he noticed her approaching, he waved her off. "Civilians first, I'm fine. You're bleeding from a head wound and possibly concussed from that crash." Maya's nurse voice emerged, the one that brooked no argument from stubborn patients. "Sit down before you fall down." His men exchanged glances but wisely said nothing as their boss allowed Maya to guide him to a low wall. She examined the wound, a deep laceration above his eyebrow where his head had struck something during the collision, and began cleaning it with practiced efficiency. "You saved them," she said quietly as she worked, dabbing antiseptic that had to sting, but he didn't flinch. "That family at the entrance. If you hadn't redirected that SUV, I told you, I don't let innocent people die in my territory." His eyes met hers as she leaned close to examine the wound. "Not if I can prevent it." Maya felt something shift in her chest, a reorientation of understanding. This was who Dante Reyes was, not the monster his reputation suggested, but a man who'd throw his own vehicle into harm's way to protect a family he didn't know. Complicated and violent and operating outside the law, yes, but driven by principles she could finally see clearly. "This needs stitches," she said, forcing herself to focus on the medicine. "Multiple ones, and you definitely have a concussion. You should be in a hospital." "Not happening. Can you do it here?" Maya looked around at the chaos. Police sirens approaching in the distance, people still crying and scared. Dante's men efficiently cleaning up evidence. "In the vehicle. It'll have to be quick." She worked fast in the back of the armored ambulance, stitching his forehead with neat, precise sutures, while Sophia drove them away from the scene before police arrived. Dante sat still and silent, letting her work, his proximity in the confined space making her hyper-aware of every breath, every small movement. "Why do you do it?" Maya asked as she tied off the final stitch. "You have enough money to live anywhere, do anything. Why stay in Chicago fighting wars like this?" "Because running away doesn't solve problems. It just lets someone worse take over." His hand caught hers as she reached for gauze, his fingers warm and calloused against her skin. I can't give you a good reason that justifies everything I do, Maya. But I can tell you that every day I try to be better than I was, to protect more people than I hurt, to build something that lasts beyond violence. Some days I succeed, some days I don't. Maya looked at their joined hands, at the man whose world she'd been drawn into through desperation and circumstance, who'd become something she hadn't expected, someone she respected despite everything. You succeeded today. Those families went home safe because of you. We succeeded, he corrected. You were here, ready to help if things went wrong. That gave me the confidence to take risks I might not have otherwise. We did this together. The we resonated through Maya with implications she wasn't ready to examine. She pulled her hand back gently, creating distance even in the confined space. I should check on your other people. Make sure everyone's injuries are treated properly. Maya. Her name on his lips stopped her. I know this is more than you signed up for. If you want to walk away from all of it, the clinic, the arrangement, everything, I'll understand. No penalties, no consequences. Just say the word. She should take the offer, should extract herself from this complicated world before she got in any deeper. But when she opened her mouth, what emerged was, I'll stay. Those people at the clinic need me. And apparently, you need someone to keep you from bleeding out when you decide to play demolition derby with mafia SUVs. His smile was brief but genuine, transforming his face into something younger, less burdened. Thank you. For everything. 3 months later, Maya stood in the clinic reviewing patient files when Dante arrived unexpectedly. It was unusual. He typically stayed away from the clinic operations, trusting her to run it independently. But tonight he looked troubled, his usual control frayed at the edges. I need to show you something, he said. Will you come with me? Maya glanced at her assistants, who nodded that they could handle the slow evening. She followed Dante to his car, noting the tension in his shoulders as he drove through Chicago's night streets. They ended up at a construction site in a neighborhood that was clearly being revitalized. Dante led her through the skeleton of a building, their footsteps echoing off concrete floors and exposed beams. What is this? Maya asked as they climbed stairs to the third floor. The future. Dante gestured to the open space around them. This building will be a comprehensive medical clinic when it's finished. Primary care, urgent care, prenatal services, mental health counseling. Sliding scale fees based on income, with free services for those who can't pay anything. Completely legitimate, fully licensed, accepting insurance and government programs. Maya stared at him, trying to process what he was describing. You're building a real clinic? A legal one? I'm trying to. He moved to the window overlooking the neighborhood. Pilsen, she realized. After what happened with the Morettis, I started thinking about sustainable solutions. The warehouse clinic helps people, but it's a band-aid on a hemorrhage. This neighborhood needs real infrastructure, real resources, so I'm building it. With what money? Maya asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. With the money I've made from operations you don't ask about and I don't discuss. Dante's honesty was almost brutal. Blood money, if you want to call it that, but money that can be transformed into something that helps instead of hurts. The question is, he turned to face her, fully, will you help me run it? Maya's breath caught. Me? Dante, I'm a nurse, not a clinic director. I don't have experience with... You have experience with exactly what this clinic needs. Understanding the community it serves, knowing how to treat people with dignity regardless of their circumstances, caring enough to show up even when it's difficult. He moved closer, his intensity palpable. I can hire administrators and doctors and all the staff we need, but I need someone who understands why this matters, who'll ensure it stays true to its mission. I need you. The offer was staggering. A legitimate medical director position, running a clinic that could transform healthcare access for thousands of people. No more operating in shadows, no more ethical gray areas. Just medicine done right, funded by wrong that was being redirected towards something good. What about the warehouse clinic? Maya asked. Those people still need help. It continues until this place is operational. Then we transition patients here into the light, into a system that can actually serve them properly. Dante's expression softened. I'm not asking you to choose between your principles and helping me, Maya. I'm offering you a chance to align both. Maya looked around the unfinished space, imagining it filled with exam rooms and waiting areas, with people getting the care they deserved in a place that respected their humanity. She thought about the past 6 months, about how she'd been gradually pulled deeper into Dante's world, and about how he'd been pulled towards something better by her presence. I have conditions, she said, echoing their first negotiation. The clinic has to be completely separate from your other operations. No money laundering, no using it as a front, no involving it in any way with illegal activities. It has to be clean, Dante, genuinely clean. It will be. I'm setting up a legitimate foundation to fund it. The money gets cleaned legally before it ever touches the clinic's operations. He paused. And I'm working on going legitimate entirely. Not overnight. These things take time, exit strategies. But I'm tired of the violence, Maya. I'm tired of fighting the same wars my mother died in. I want to build something that lasts, something I can be proud of instead of just necessary. The admission revealed depths of change she hadn't fully recognized. The man before her wasn't the same one who'd listened to her desperate plea about her mother's beating 6 months ago. Or maybe he was, and she just finally understood him clearly. Okay, Maya said softly. I'll do it. I'll help you build this clinic and run it properly. But Dante, this has to work. You have to actually follow through on going legitimate. Because I can't keep existing in the space between your two worlds forever. I know. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. I'm trying, Maya. You've shown me what's possible when you operate with real principles, instead of just pretending to have them. I want to be worthy of that vision. They stood in the unfinished building as headlights from passing cars painted moving patterns through the space. Two people from incompatible worlds who'd somehow found common ground in the desire to heal rather than harm. When I walked into your restaurant that night, Maya said quietly, I thought I was choosing between my family's safety and my own death. I never imagined I'd end up here, planning a medical clinic with the man I thought was going to kill me. Dante's hand tightened on hers. When you walked into my restaurant, I thought you were either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Turns out you were both, and you made me want to be someone worthy of that courage. Maya turned to face him fully, seeing the man beneath the reputation, scarred by violence but striving toward something better. Powerful, but trying to use that power more carefully. Complicated in ways that made him real, rather than monstrous. I'm still scared, she admitted. Of this world. Of what you do, of what it means that I care about you despite knowing what you are. You should be scared. Fear means you're still thinking clearly. His free hand rose to cup her face with surprising gentleness. But Maya, what you've done in 6 months, transforming the warehouse clinic, helping me see possibilities I'd stopped looking for, making me want to be better, that's worth being scared for. At least it is to me. When he kissed her, it felt inevitable, like the conclusion to a story that had been building since the moment she'd collapsed at his feet begging for help. His lips were gentle despite the violence she knew those hands were capable of, tender in a way that suggested he understood how precious and fragile this moment was. Maya kissed him back, letting herself feel everything she'd been denying for months. Attraction that had grown despite her better judgment, respect that had developed through watching his actions rather than believing his reputation, and something deeper that felt dangerously close to love. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Dante rested his forehead against hers. I don't deserve you. I know that. But I'm selfish enough to want you anyway. You're right. You don't deserve me. Maya's smile took the sting from the words. But maybe together we can build something that deserves both of us. Something better than what either of us could manage alone. Partners? He asked, echoing the term he'd used months ago when offering her the clinic position. Partners, Maya confirmed. In building this clinic, in going legitimate, in creating something good from all the complicated mess we've been through. But Dante, she pulled back enough to meet his eyes directly. If you backslide, if you choose violence over solutions, if you become the monster instead of the man trying not to be one, I'm gone. I'll walk away and never look back, understood? Understood. His acceptance was immediate and unflinching. And Maya, if I do backslide, if I can't become what I'm trying to be, I want you to walk away. Don't sacrifice who you are trying to save who I'm not sure I can become. The honesty was painful and perfect, acknowledging the reality of what they were attempting. Two people from different worlds, trying to build a bridge between them that might collapse at any moment. But as they stood in that unfinished building, surrounded by the promise of something better, Maya chose to believe in the possibility, rather than the probability of failure. The Pilsen Community Health Center opened on a Tuesday morning in spring, with ribbon-cutting ceremonies and speeches from local officials who praised the philanthropic foundation that had funded it. Dante stood in the back during the ceremony, deliberately staying out of photographs and official recognition, letting the clinic exist separately from his reputation. Maya, now the official medical director, cut the ribbon alongside community leaders, her mother and Bella beaming with pride in the front row. The clinic's lobby filled with families seeking care, with people who'd been patients at the warehouse clinic now transitioning to legitimate health care, with children getting vaccinations and elderly residents finally addressing chronic conditions. It was everything they'd envisioned: clean, professional, compassionate, and completely legal. Later that evening, after the last patient had been seen and the staff had gone home celebrating a successful first day, Maya found Dante waiting in her new office, a real office with windows and diplomas on the wall, and her name on the door. "How does it feel?" he asked, leaning against her desk with an expression of genuine curiosity. "Surreal. Amazing. Terrifying." Maya sank into her chair, exhaustion and exhilaration competing for dominance. "We actually did it. We built something real and good." "You built it," Dante corrected. "I just provided resources. Everything that makes this place special, the culture, the compassion, the commitment to serving people regardless of ability to pay, that's all you." Maya shook her head. "It's us. Your vision of what was needed, my skills to implement it, our combined stubbornness to make it work despite every obstacle. We did this together." Dante moved around the desk, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. Over the past 18 months, their relationship had deepened and solidified, built on trust earned through shared challenges and mutual respect. He'd kept his promise about going legitimate, gradually, carefully, but genuinely. The warehouse clinic had closed 6 months ago, its patients all transitioned here. His other operations were being systematically converted or sold to people he trusted to maintain his standards. It was a slow transformation, but it was real. "Bella's graduating middle school next month," Maya said, resting her head against his chest and listening to his steady heartbeat. "She wants you there. Said you're basically family now, and she'll be embarrassed if you don't come." Dante's chest rumbled with quiet laughter. "Your sister terrifies me more than any rival organization ever did. I wouldn't dare disappoint her." "Smart man." Maya looked up at him, seeing the face she'd memorized over countless nights, the scar above his eyebrow from the Moretti confrontation, the slight crook in his nose from some fight before she knew him, the dark eyes that could be cold as winter or warm as summer depending on who he was looking at. "I love you. I don't think I've said that clearly enough. You say it every time you challenge me to be better, every time you refuse to compromise your principles even when it would be easier, every time you choose to stay, despite having every reason to leave. His hand cupped her face with familiar tenderness. But hearing the words is nice too. I love you, Maya Torres. You saved me in ways that have nothing to do with medicine. We saved each other, Maya corrected, rising on her toes to kiss him. That's what partners do. Outside her office window, the city lights sparkled across Chicago's skyline, illuminating a metropolis that contained both their pasts and their future. Somewhere in those streets were people who still feared Dante Reyes's name, and people who'd been helped by his protection. There were patients who'd come to this clinic tomorrow seeking care, and complications that would inevitably arise from trying to fully leave his old life behind. But tonight, in the clinic they'd built together from desperation and determination, Maya chose to focus on what they'd achieved rather than what challenges remained. They'd transformed violence into healing, fear into safety, and impossible circumstances into a love that had survived everything thrown against it. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was something better, a real one, complicated and hard won, and absolutely worth every difficult step of the journey. As Dante held her close and the city hummed with life around them, Maya finally understood what her sister had warned her about months ago. Dante had wanted something back bigger than she'd anticipated giving. He'd wanted her heart, her trust, her belief that he could become better than his past. And she'd given him all of it freely, because sometimes the best things come from the most unlikely places, and the most unexpected people become exactly who you need them to be. We've reached the end of Maya and Dante's incredible journey from that desperate night to building something beautiful together. If this story of redemption and unexpected love moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more emotional stories that prove even the darkest beginnings can lead to the brightest endings. Thank you so much for watching.